Hi, this is Uncle Matt's D&D Neighborhood. I am Matt Finch, and I have with me Ben Barsh, and we're going to be talking about a couple of things. First of all, the basically how the younger generation of gamers is moving forward because there is sort of a large growth going on right now with fifth edition D&D, and we're also going to talk about a Kickstarter that he's doing through Pacesetter Games, which is an established company, and so we'll talk sort of a little bit about the adventure that they're doing, so that this isn't just a sort of an advertisement, but I do like to let people know about Kickstarters that are going on. And if you're interested in this sort of interview, please remember to subscribe to the channel, and also we do have a Patreon at patreon.com Uncle Matt that helps fund this sort of thing. And so with all of that sort of initial shtick out of the way, Ben, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Barsh, and I have been working with Pacesetter Games and Simulations for nearly 5 years now on the forefront. But, before then, when I was younger, helping my dad with shipping and all the tedious work that is involved with third-party publisher. But I first want to start off by, Matt, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really do appreciate it. This is the first sort of interview that I've ever done. So it's really humbling that it's with you. Because you are one of my favorite game designers. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I've sort of been watching you grow up a little bit too at these conventions. So but I don't, so there's a little more of the whole Uncle Matt going on in this
exactly
interview than there is in most. All right. So, but first of all, tell people how old you are.
I am 20 years old. I just turned 20 last month around this time. So I'm still, new to the gaming industry in a sense of age, but as a sense of experience. I mean, like you said, I've been at these conventions and working with my dad for years now. So as far as experience goes, I feel like I'm finally ready to step more into the role of a game designer or writer, publisher, or whatever title that, is assigned to us nowadays.
And so let me also sort of bring in there in terms of your history in the game, which is that your dad, Bill Barsh, is he's been around, he's been doing stuff for 5 years. So you've shown up at a lot of what he does is first edition D&D, and so that's what Pacesetter has published. And he's been at the old school OSR conventions a lot, and he's been bringing you to those. And yet at the same time, what you actually play is fifth edition, and so you've really got a crossover between the old school sort of gaming and then the fifth edition type of gaming.
Yeah, exactly. And my dad is the first edition mind. I've run a first edition campaign rather at the old school conventions. I love to run first edition because I still love the game system, but sort of the role that I've moved into is more of like a fifth edition coordinator, specifically because my friends and all the people who are looking to get into Dungeons and Dragons that I've known from years past really want to start with fifth edition. They want to start with the new game system, and Wizards is doing a really good job with fifth edition. I completely applaud them for everything that they've done so far. And especially with our local game store and events that we want to fit in with them and sponsorships and everything like that, fifth edition has sort of been the route that we've been traveling as well. But it by no means is a split from the first edition. It's just my dad and I are both so well versed in our specific game systems that it's actually starting to work really, really well for us.
Okay, and so let's talk just a little bit about Pacesetter Games, and then I want to talk about Rise of the Nefarious, which is the Kickstarter that you're running right now. But just to give people an idea of where that Kickstarter is coming from, talk a little bit about how you and your dad are currently running Pacesetter Games, because it sounds like you're working into a situation where you've got two things going in parallel. In terms of the company, which you didn't used to have before. And so tell us how Pacesetter Games now is sort of developing to run this fifth edition Kickstarter.
So it really came out that we wanted to start doing fifth edition was about a year ago. A year ago is when we started getting in coordination with our local game store, Siege Games in Howell, Michigan, Metro Detroit, basically. And we came to them, and we're a publisher and they're a game store. So we just thought, hey, this could be a really good mix of fan bases and promotion for both of us. So we went over our product, and we had at that point just a couple 5e products, like maybe one or two. I can't remember specifically how many. And the majority of it was first edition. And the game store owner, Jesse, was, you know, like, if you get more 5th edition stuff out, we would love to work with you more on, you know, retail options and everything like that. So really born from the 5th edition was born from that inspiration to reach out to more gamers in our local area. And then as that idea grew, I started becoming more into the Dungeons and Dragons scene and seeing how popular 5th edition was. It really just inspired me to write for more or less the masses. And I wanted to get my personal creation out to make as many people happy at their gaming table as possible. And I saw that as an avenue through 5th edition.
There's a definite when you really love I mean, there's an interesting split. I mean, there are some people who really love their system and they want to publish for the system, and there are some people who really love their adventures and their products, and for that group of people, they want to get it out to the larger group and the mainstream. And so I think what I'm hearing is that you're focused very much on the adventure, because I know that the one you're doing the Kickstarter for is one that you wrote yourself, right?
Yeah. Entirely. Yeah.
So that's you know, that's always an interesting split to see among people. So that's one of the things that guided you toward 5th edition, is just getting the you know, getting your work out into the mainstream public as opposed to the much more niche.
Yeah. And it really does have to do a lot with the system as well. I know I started playing 5th edition about, I think it's coming up on 2 years now. And my friend who I went to high school with, who's a year younger than I am, he knew I played D&D, but at that point I was strictly playing 1st edition and 1st edition alone. I was very stuck in my game system, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you love a system, play it, you know. But he's like, hey, how about I run a 5th edition game for you and your group? And I was like a little skeptical at first, because, you know, I had read the 5th edition books, you know, we had them, and I wasn't super in love with it. But then as I started to play it more, and then I, you know, transitioned into DMing, because I'm our group's resident DM, and some people hate that, but I absolutely love it. I almost prefer DMing to playing at some points. But I really started to love 5th edition, and I got really wrapped into the stories that Wizards writes, the Adventurers League, and just that community connection that 5th edition has really provided for local game stores, and not only the game store itself, but the community around it. I really, really fell in love with that.
Okay, and then we're also going to talk about generally about the younger generation of gamers that's coming in. But first, let's cut over to the Kickstarter now that you are doing, and you are the one. You're the one that's managing the thing, as I understand it. Although your dad is helping out with things like layout, and inspirations, and so on and so forth, since he's done this before. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. So I launched my Kickstarter on June 15th. It's called Rise of the Nefarious, a 5th edition campaign. That's the title that's up on Kickstarter. Currently, we are at $3,427 at the point that we're recording this. So that's 81 backers. And I am absolutely blown away by the amount of support that I've gotten so far. Like you mentioned in the beginning of the show, I am young, and I am not specifically have a name for myself yet, even though, you know, I've been going to these conventions, but I don't really have a name for myself in the writing perspective of the industry.
Yeah, and certainly not in the larger 5th edition community, because you've been more with the old school group.
Yeah, so this is sort of trying to break down the wall to that whole different community. But I totally admire that, you know, doing that largely on your own, because it is very, very difficult to make that first step into establishing with people, you know, that you're a good writer and that you've got good layout and that you're reliable on Kickstarters and so on and so forth. So that really is a big step, and you know, kudos to you for having the courage to do that. Yeah, no, it definitely it scared the living, you know, I won't swear, but it scared the living heck out of me. For the majority of my gaming career is I was always so excited to write an adventure and get it out there. But then as I grew more into it, I was like, I started to get into that perfectionist mentality of every little detail. I need to have everything in line, perfect, ready to go. And that's 100% true. But at some point you just got to do it. You know, you just have to take that step and push yourself to take that step, because if not, it's never going to get done. And I've gotten a lot of inspiration from, my dad, but as well as all of the amazing game designers and fans from Pacesetter to finally just take that step. So I one day, I literally one day I woke up and I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm finally going to get going.
Okay, so let's talk about Rise of the Nefarious now.
Yeah.
It's in terms of the adventure, and the Kickstarter here is the basic. You have finished writing a module. You're still in the edit phase during the
Mhm.
Kickstarter, but the product itself is fully written. It's the one adventure type Kickstarter with stretch goals that may involve expanding it a little bit.
Mhm.
And so that's sort of the model. And you talked about where it stands. Tell us without giving big spoilers, tell
Sure.
us sort of what the setup is on the adventure itself so that people can go look at it. And we'll put a link down below that on where to
Sure.
find it.
Yeah, so the basic premise of the adventure is there's a city called McIntyre, and about 300 years ago, the High Wizards and High Council of McIntyre was experimenting with new magic in order to make the city more prosperous. And eventually, these High Wizards were corrupted, and they accidentally set off this apocalypse. Well, not accidentally set off an apocalypse, but they set off this apocalypse that basically destroyed the city and destroyed a lot of the inhabitants. And the city was so fractured that the people didn't even think to rebuild. So they left. And a lot of time has passed, and there are murmurs and rumors that the city is becoming functional again, that people are trying to rebuild, but they're not rebuilding in the name of the good city at its origin. They are trying to rebuild in the name of the evil High Wizards that sent off this apocalypse. So the adventurers are heading out to the city to kind of check out what's going on. There are, rumors and legend that the city is still filled with gold and treasure and magic items that the inhabitants of the city either left behind or they were sadly deceased, so they couldn't do anything with them. So along the way, there's going to be some encounters and problems, and the main adventure though happens in the city. And that's what I'm thinking about. Like you said, Kickstarter with expansions. I am thinking about expanding it as well as a stretch goal. But need not fear, I have a lot of writing that didn't specifically make the initial cut that I would love to bring in to expand it more. But like I said, I'll be announcing that as a stretch goal in the near future, as long as we keep funding the Kickstarter.
Okay, well let's jump back to that. So it sounds like you've got you're using one of the general tropes of an adventure, which is going back and stopping the rebuilding of evil in a place. But it sounds like you have got a very, very and those tropes are very powerful. I'm not saying that
Sure.
they're not a cliche. There are certain things that simply create a better adventure background, and you can probably count to 10 of or 20 of those. And so you're working with one of those high powered tropes, and it sounds to me like one of the really interesting things about this is going to be the tactical approach, because it is fairly uncommon for people to take a city as being a ruined location where there are monsters. And so you want to give any clues about how you're setting up the tactical and the map and stuff, or are you going to leave that as a mystery for people to find out?
I'll give a rough overlay, of course. It's in the Kickstarter description, so this isn't specifically something that's going to be blown out, blow the door open of spoilers or anything.
Yeah, it's a softball question.
It is. Thank you for that. So the city is basically set up into 3 different factions now, and each head of the faction was or is a descendant from one of these High Wizards or anyone else who was a part of the apocalypse about 300 years ago. And they're all working in coordinates with each other in order to raise up this city to be evil power of what it once was. But you mentioned, sort of that powerful trope. I am taking the powerful-esque trope, and I really want to do it different. And that's sort of the motto that I have for a lot of my adventures, and that I run at my home game or my campaign or something that I'm publishing, is I want to do it different. So even if it is something that has been done before, and it really is hard to rewrite the wheel at this point.
Well, I don't think it's a wheel. I mean, there's certain, almost mythological, folkloric themes, and so there are a lot of ways to branch those things out. And so I'm not at all saying,
oh, for sure, yeah.
So I probably what you're doing, I would still Well, anyway, so okay, so go on because I interrupted you with that,
No,
but
it's okay.
this
So
is one of my
basically,
things, you know, that
sure.
there are
Yeah, yeah,
certain stories that are not actually cliches. So go ahead.
sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm just like I said, I just want to do it different. Add in different encounters that would normally be there, or um, I don't want to limit myself to that specific ideology of taking back a city or anything that happens before then. I really want to do it different in a way that people really don't experience a lot. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but I just want to give the best adventure. And it's really hard sometimes for low level characters to have that sort of high fantasy adventure without having game breaking mechanics or anything like that.
Yes,
But
that really is
it's difficult. It really is. But I had a great conversation at this last North Texas con just a week or two ago with Frank Menzer, and he was. I played in his game on Saturday night, and we played first, second level characters, and we were doing some really, really high fantasy adventures. And and then we sat down and talked after about my Kickstarter and routes that I could edit my writing a little bit to, again, do it different and have that different first level feel that you normally have. And he really inspired me to find ways to work in these high fantasy ideas into low level play. And that's really what I want to do. I want to give low level characters a different experience than they would normally have.
Okay, so that's a really interest piquing bit
Mm-hmm.
about this Kickstarter. Then is that you've focused on doing that, and I think a lot of people will probably be interested in the fact that Frank Menzer was giving advice about that too, because obviously he's one of the iconic folks out
Definitely.
there.
Yeah, definitely. He's been great. I mean, he's always been nothing but amazing to me. I remember I met him at my first convention and my first Gen Con as well. He came over our booth and was just talking to my dad. And my dad just walks over to me as he's talking to someone else. He's like, he wrote the Red Box. And I was like, my heart just kind of, my stomach sank a little bit. And I had a overwhelming fanboy moment. And he came up to me and he was super polite, awesome guy, complimented me. And yeah, he's been fantastic. And I was really, really happy to sit down with him and talk to him about advice on writing, because like you said, he is one of the legends of the industry for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so so that's Rise of the Nefarious, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a link to the Kickstarter down below the video so that people can go to it and find it. And also, I need you to send me a link to Pacesetter Games in general, because if people are watching this long after the Kickstarter, but they want to go take a look at the module, presumably there will be a way that people can get it after the Kickstarter. And if you can give me that link, I'll put it down there too.
For sure. Yeah. Once the Kickstarter is all complete, it will be up on our website. Just a little focus on the Kickstarter real quick before we move off of it. The softcover edition is exclusive to the Kickstarter. And the hardcover will live on through the stretch of eternity, basically. But the softcover is exclusive. So if you are thinking about picking up a softcover, go ahead and pledge that level. And the hardcovers will be on our website after the Kickstarter. We'll take it to conventions. I've already gotten a couple of retailers who are interested in picking it up. One has already picked it up. So the softcover is exclusive, but the hardcover will be on the website for sure.
Okay, so if you're all about getting, did I mute myself?
No,
okay, now here we are. All right. So yeah, if you're interested in getting the less expensive option on this, if you don't have a lot of cash, the Kickstarter is the time to get in. So
yeah, exactly.
hopefully you're watching this. I'm going to try and post this probably within the next couple of days, and so that'll give people time to see it. So let's move on now to younger generation. And the sort of explosion that we've seen in people who've never played RPGs before coming into play 5th edition D&D. You're in the generation where people are doing that. So tell me about, how is it people are learning about D&D? What does that look like in that age group?
So I actually just got a little chills because it makes me so happy. I cannot make this up. But it's really amazing. And a lot of people, like we talked about before the show, and I mentioned it really quickly, but there's a lot of people that I knew from past, like middle school or high school, or even my neighbors who have been contacting me and been like, hey, you work in Dungeons and Dragons industry. Can you run a game for us? Or, can we schedule a time in the next couple of weeks where you just talk to us about D&D and, maybe get us on the pathway to playing? And That's been a really, really amazing experience for me because I grew up with, encapsulated in the fantasy worlds and Dungeons and Dragons because of my father. And not a lot of people played. So I had to get my friends into it. But now it's sort of blown up through things like, people say Stranger Things a lot. Stranger Things genuinely has been pushing Dungeons and Dragons in an amazing way. A lot of people reference, hey, I saw D&D on Stranger Things. I want to give that a try. That seems super cool. And a lot of people who are interested in Dungeons and Dragons have played video games or have played other games in the past that this is just sort of another interest for them. It's not a big leap from never playing games before. Another big thing is the Twitch stream Critical Role has done leaps and bounds for Dungeons and Dragons. Every Thursday that they go live and stream their game, I'm pretty sure, I may be wrong on this, but they get about 50,000 viewers split between Twitch and YouTube. And it's a lot of the times more than that. I'm pretty sure
no,
that's
I think you're right.
So there's just been amazing publicity pushes like this to really get the young generation back into Dungeons and Dragons. And it's been super humbling that I've been able to help a lot of people get into Dungeons and Dragons because of those avenues.
Okay, so let me ask, because one of the things that people in my generation looking at the millennial generation and communications and information it's just, I mean, there's no comparison between what was going on when we were growing up. And so one of the things that's conventional wisdom, sort of in the older generation industry, gaming industry, which I always try and put in air quotes, but is the question of how do you guys communicate? I mean, we know what we do. We tend to get on either forums or Facebook, and we're usually a step behind whatever the technology is that's being used by the younger generation. So you're talking about people contacting you. How did they hear about the fact that you were doing D&D?
It's mainly Facebook. We have Facebook posts whenever we go to conventions or do events at the game store. I post about it. I've been starting to post a lot more on my personal Twitter about Dungeons and Dragons, where I have, I think, about 600 followers. And a lot of them are people that I went to school with at some point or played sports with at some point, as well as Instagram. Just me posting about playing Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, Snapchat is another really big one. I think I have about 200 friends on Snapchat. So nearly every single time.
Is Snapchat the one that deletes the thing afterwards?
Yeah. But what there is, like the Facebook story where you can, post a story on Facebook.
Yeah.
They have Snapchat is the inventor of that. So you can send a picture to someone and it'll expire within, 1 to 10 seconds or whatever it is. Or you can post on your story, which any of your friends can go ahead and click on. And nearly every time I play Dungeons and Dragons, I either take a picture with my friends or I take a picture of my character sheet or behind the damn screen. And I'm like, it's a great night for D&D, or we'll be playing outside by my pool. And I'll be like, you can't get better scenery for D&D than this. And I'll get messages from people saying, hey, that seems really cool. Can we try it sometime? And I'm like, yeah, just let me get a group together and we'll run a game. So just
I can't get my head around the fact that this stuff just deletes itself. I mean, it's like,
it really is. I don't know. It's working though. They're a big business. Yeah.
There are some things I don't expect to understand,
Yeah, but they've since then they've added in the ability to text through it. So it just works like Facebook Messenger or a normal text message. So they've added a lot of things like that. They've also added in an option where you can set the picture to not expire. So it's really sort of just become another messaging app at this point. But you're talking about how we communicate. That's specifically just that way, as social media has done a fantastic job of me being able to promote Dungeons and Dragons to other people to get them into the game.
So the way that must have worked, I mean, if you're getting new people who are coming in, then that must be because you had your core of people. You were talking about people who played sports with you and so on that you knew. And so they're seeing the D&D stuff. How do you have a sense of how it's growing from that point?
Do you mean from the sense of, I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, well, you've got like, I think you said 600 followers or something like that.
Yeah, on my Twitter.
Okay. So, I mean, that started, let's say that you had 60 people who knew you. before, and they were not necessarily in D&D. What made it grow from the personal contacts with people that you had up to 600?
Well, a lot of them are personal contacts. I have a separate Twitter for like my gaming and stuff like that, where I have about 300 followers. But it just grew by meeting people, by posting pictures. And the big thing on Twitter is you can retweet it or you can just share it. So if I post something and say you retweet me, that shows to all of your followers as well. So it's just that cycle of promotion basically that just grows your community on social media that way.
Okay. And then what is it you do on Instagram?
Instagram, I post pictures when we go to conventions. I have been a little bad about that. I need to get back to posting to Instagram. It's just with like 4 social media apps, you kind of neglect one every convention.
That's the difficulty I have with the social media is how can you possibly do all of those things? But I guess there are some people who only do one, and so if you want to talk to them, you got to be on the thing they do. Okay.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice being able to be reached from 4 different places if someone needs to reach you. Yeah, but I just take pictures of us when we're at conventions. I posted my cover art, and when the Kickstarter was going live, I'm gonna post more when as I get more artwork in for the interior art. I'm gonna be posting pictures there. So it's really just being consistent with your posting. So in order to build up your fan base on every level of social media, because that will help you in the long run. Even if you have a small turnover rate of people going to buy your product or people that are checking out your product from the social media, it's definitely worth it to take 3-4 minutes out of your day and post one of those pictures. It's definitely worth it.
See, because one of the things is you may not have the experience yet in the production of the modules, but I think you've got some experience out there that is probably way superior to what most people in industry are doing. And that brings me to a question of Wizards of the Coast.
Sure.
But you have said that they're doing a great job. Now, I look at them and yeah, they've got a website with a lot of great content coming out frequently. They don't have any sort of peer-to-peer connection. There's no way that you can get on Wizards and meet somebody, who's in California online.
Sure.
But they've been supporting game stores, and it seems like very large numbers of people are interacting with game stores again, and that hasn't happened for decades. So, I mean, talk about game stores a little bit.
Okay, yeah, for sure. And I love talking about this because I'm very, very lucky to have an awesome game store around me. And I'm really good friends with the owners. I'm really good friends with the regulars. And it's just a great community.
So one of the other things you need to put on your list of stuff to send me afterwards is go ahead and send me a link to that game store. Yeah, we'll give them some free advertising down in the description as well.
Awesome. I'm sure they'd be glad to hear that.
Awesome. But I interrupted you, so go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So how Wizards is working with the game stores. The big one that I would like to hit on is their special edition covers of the books that they release. So I have it right here. So they just came out with Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and it goes over a lot of lore, like the Blood War with the Gith, and then like the endless war between the Gith. But it's also a ginormous new monster manual. And what Wizards does is they have the normal cover that they release, but they also have the limited edition cover. And I don't know if I'm 100% right with this, but I'm pretty sure they only send the limited edition cover to retailers and game stores.
Okay.
So, and then what they also do is they release them early to these game stores. So when we had our Mordenkainen's release before, like 2 weeks before the book actually came out to, Amazon and all those massive online retailers, they send them to game stores. And then game stores have release nights. So we had a midnight release night. We had like 70 people go or something like that. And we played a small adventure that featured the new content from Mordenkainen's that was written by Chris Lindsay from Adventurers League. Or Chris Lindsay from Wizards, but it was for Adventurers League. And we had an early release party. So they have been overwhelmingly supportive that way with sending their books early to the game stores. So that way people go and buy the books from the game store, and then you support the game store instead of just sending it to Amazon right away and then getting the book for a cheaper price on Amazon and then getting it 2 days later because they ship so quickly. Mm-hmm. So they've been really supportive monetarily that way. But they've also been just supportive in general. I know I can speak for one specific person. His name is Alan Patrick. I know I'm going to mess up his title because we never really talk about work when we're together. But I believe he is the community manager for Adventurers League, but he also writes for Adventurers League.
Mm-hmm.
He actually lives about an hour away from us and our game store. So he's at the game store all the time, and he works for Wizards with Adventures League. So having such a popular person within the Adventures League community around has been very, very supportive for a lot of people, and especially the game store.
So he's somebody he needs to be my next interview, right? I'm gonna follow these rabbit holes and
exactly. I'll get him in contact with you if you want him on for sure.
All right, yeah. If you could do that, have him. Do you have my email address?
I don't. I'll give it to you. I'll give it. Yeah,
we'll do that on Facebook. Okay, so moving along. That's Adventures League. So it's sounding like Wizards has a coordinated strategy in which they're financially supporting the game stores with those limited edition covers. They are putting out a lot of content on the website. They don't have that, but the thing that puzzles me is they don't have that peer-to-peer ability of putting people into contact. So how's that done?
So that's done mainly through Facebook groups, I would say. Yeah, I guess that's really done through Facebook groups, like the Big Fifth Edition Facebook group. People often look for virtual tabletop groups is a big one. But there's also a forum and Facebook groups in which you can go and talk about Adventures League, and that's the big one.
Where is that? Is that on Wizards?
There's one on Facebook. Is the big one that I know of. And basically what happens is in Adventures League, if you get a magical item that your character just cannot use, you can trade it with another person of something that's for equal or higher value, I believe. So you can go on these groups and trade your magic items, and that connects people from literally all over the world. You know, if my wizard has a headband of intellect and my intellect score raises above a certain point where it's just useless to me, I can go trade that to another low-level wizard, and they can give me like a wand in return.
And how does
that connects me with people like in Europe? You know, like it's crazy.
Does Wizards keep track of that in the Adventures League? Who has what?
It's basically an honor system. If an admin or a DM were to ask you where you got that, you have record sheets that you keep track of everything, as well as all you would have to do is just pull up the post and say, yeah, we traded this for this at this point. So
okay.
It's a big honor system, and the overwhelming majority of people are very, very honorable with this, because if not, it's just no fun, you know?
Yeah, no, that's like in my whoa.
Look out there.
in my online game, I don't have a dice rolling thing that shows the dice, because I trust all those players, because there is no game if you're fudging the rolls. I do think I may put one in, but the reason for that is that people love the excitement of seeing the dice actually roll,
like the nat 1 or like the nat 20. You know?
Yeah, there it is. Yay! All right, hey, listen, Ben, let's go ahead and we'll cut this one short here, and partly that's because I want to check it and make sure that it did record properly, since I had one screw up a couple days ago, and so we'll draw this to a close. I'll go and check and make sure that it recorded, and then what we'll do is we'll get together again and talk more about younger gamers, because what I would like to do is I've got a series right now on publishing that I haven't done a whole lot with recently, and so getting one that sort of goes back over the terrain we were talking about the social media, but I'd like to expand on it and do one like that later on. Awesome.
Yeah, okay. I'm definitely in.
All right, awesome. So let me go ahead. I'm gonna wrap this one up now so that I can check and make sure I don't have technical difficulties. So Ben, go ahead and say goodbye to everybody.
All right, thanks you everyone for listening. If you do get a moment, please check out my Kickstarter, and whether you just share it on Facebook, I would be very grateful. Or if you actually do pledge it, thank you so much. Make sure to give Matt's channel some love. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button for Matt, and like the video, because that's what gets him in the recommended section, so you can see it when you're watching your other favorite D&D YouTubers as well. There's your quick plug.
I like you more and more, Ben. You have grown up well.
I try.
All right, everybody. So whatever kind of Dungeons and Dragons it is that you play, imagine the hell out of it.